Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to the Finding Financial Fitness Show. I'm your host, Nino Gonzalez, joined today again by my co-host, Pei Chen. Pei, how's it going?
Great. Nice to see you again, Nino. How's
Yeah,
everything over there on your side
good.
of the tech? of
It
Houston?
just feels like we're talking from a different side of the pond, but we're on different ends of Houston. As many people will know, Houston is a pretty big metropolitan area. So we're in the same town, but we're also pretty far away. So we'll be doing some podcasts in person, which I'm definitely looking forward to doing as well. But for now, we're joined remote. And for this episode, I mean, for us, it's talking about who we are, right? We mentioned this very, very briefly on our trailer of kind of what we're bringing into the show and what our backgrounds are. But now we're going to kind of dive a little bit into that. I know I have my own unique story. Pei has her own unique story, just like everybody else does. And so I think the more you know about us, the better you'll see where we're coming from, the angles that we're trying to help, and the discussions that we're having. So, Pei, I know you have a very long and complex, and I love hearing your story every time because you have so much history kind of baked in that and life experience. So why don't you go ahead and share with the audience?
Hopefully, this is not going to show my age, but but yes, long journey to be here. Hi, everybody. So we're sitting here in Houston, Texas, but I am not a native Houstonian. I came here by way of Taiwan, then to Boston, then to California, then to Hawaii, and then finally here. So this is hopefully not the final destination. I love Houston, but I have bigger dreams to see the rest of the world. And who knows, maybe I'll come back here and finally just settle down when I'm really, really much older. But right now I'm still on a journey to travel and see the world and enjoy life. But yeah, immigrant to this country, and I've always been a little bit different. I'm a good student. I follow what my parents tell me to do, right? Study hard, the typical immigrant story. Study hard, go get good grades, and go get a good job. But when I was about to go to college, I actually talked to my parents about, hey, instead of paying tuition, which I saw the bill, and I say, why don't you give me the money so I can go and start a business? That conversation didn't go so well. I wasn't very persuasive. I didn't have a business plan. I didn't know what I was doing. So good thing they said no to me. And so I did go to college, got my bachelor's degree in political science of all things. And coming out, I just didn't know what to do. So I went into sales. I, by nature, I am actually not an extrovert. I train myself to be an extrovert. I train myself to do the things that I don't enjoy doing, to get good at it. So I went into sales. I was a counter girl at Macy's, the makeup counter, talk to strangers, being very, very uncomfortable, out of my comfort zone. But I got used to it. I got comfortable. And now I love it. So not to say that you can't change who you are, right? Like through repetition and just kind of conscious decision to make a change, it is possible. And then after that, I got married, and my husband, joined the military. So we got moved around a lot. So California was where he did his training, and then we got deployed to Hawaii. Wonderful 8 years, 7 or 8 years of our lives. And then when he got out, we moved to Texas, and I became a teacher. But throughout this journey, the underlying theme has always that little bug of entrepreneurship has been there. And the reason why was because I read this book. Somebody, I don't remember who it was, Rich Dad Poor Dad, shared that book with me. And that little seed that got planted in my brain germinated over the years. And that took me to today where, I'm enjoying a wonderful lifestyle, and I get to help people and teach people what I do, and met someone awesome like you, Nino, along the journey. And here we are doing a podcast, right? So what
Yeah.
about you?
Yeah, I think that's such a unique. I think there's a preconception. At least I think it's changing now, but there was always a preconception that the people that were wealthy or rich, which we will have an episode that will discuss the difference between what it means to be wealthy and rich. But I think oftentimes people have a misconception that people inherit their wealth. and that it's very difficult to just bootstrap it and become wealthy, that the rich have an unfair advantage that other people don't have. And I think that your story and mine and many others goes counter to that, that you can start from basically nothing, come to this country with nothing on your back, with not really knowing much, and still become a success. And of course, success is a relative term, but I think it's such an inspirational journey that you've had. I know you've shared that story multiple times, and of course have gone deeper. So I love hearing it. So on my end, I mean, I grew up as a, I'm a little bit younger than you, Pei, but it was always
It's a
my
little.
parents were very disciplined about go to school, get a degree, and get a good job, 401k, retire, the typical middle class family. And that's how I was brought up. I was an athlete. Soccer was my choice of sport, and then eventually got into bodybuilding, which is kind of the other angle to this piece that we're going to be discussing as well. Is that was my journey. My journey was not about making money. My focus was health. My focus was, both of my parents were always physically fit, always very active, and instilled those disciplines in me. And the way I took it was, now that I can look back, is, well, if I can't have money, well, I can at least have my health. And my parents always instilled in me that money doesn't matter, health does. And that's something you can control. And I'm not saying I fully agree with that, but that's what I was brought up with. And so I knew that my focus had to be health. And from a wealth standpoint, kind of do what I need to do, get a good job. And so I went, after I ended up realizing my dreams of not becoming a professional soccer player. I realized, okay, well, let me go study school. And I learned about nutrition, learned about exercise, became a clinical dietitian, worked in the hospital setting. Money was fine. But like you said, there's that term you used, the entrepreneurial bug. I never knew what that meant. I never put a term on it, but there was always this desire to want more. I remember I started off when I was playing soccer. I would buy soccer shoes. I would go to a Ross or a Marshalls, and I would see these soccer shoes that are like $250, $300 shoes. And I would see them for $20, $30. And I'm like, oh, that's a great deal for myself. Surely enough, when I would go play soccer, people would ask me, oh man, your parents must be rich. You got those new shoes. And I would say, no, no, no. I found a way to get them. And then I'll never forget this. One time I ended up selling the shoes I had on my feet for triple what I bought them for. Right. I was playing soccer and the guy really loved my shoes. I sold them to him they were half of what the original cost was, but I only paid $20. So I got 3 times what my money was. And I thought, oh, this is easy. I could just go buy shoes and sell them. Little did I know that was what was deemed quote unquote flipping or arbitrage, which is now very popular. But that was kind of my first taste of it. And ever since then, I would always try to find ways to make money, not really understanding why. Well, surely enough, I got into one job as a personal trainer at a local gym here. And I met a really good friend of mine now who did tell me about Rich Dad Poor Dad. And I heard about it from one of my clients. And I never read it because at this time I was a reader, but I was more personal health, personal development, not really finance books. But eventually I picked that book up and I started reading it. And then, like you said as well, that kind of planted the seed in my mind of, whoa, well, hold on. There's a different way to go about doing this. And at the same time, the book that I read after that was Atomic Habits by James Clear, which is a very interesting book about improving your life, right? How small habits can make a mighty difference. I think that was such a powerful book. Those two go hand in hand. If you can change your habits, those same habits, and this is where the health and the wealth component link up, the same habits and the same disciplines that you need to become successful making money and in wealth are the same disciplines required to become physically fit and have a healthy and fulfilling life. I was already implementing those health disciplines, eating healthy, training, waking up at a certain time, eating at certain times. Well, if I just took those disciplines and applied it to wealth, well, I figured, why not? And that's what I did. But I continued to keep my same training journey, my health journey, but then I started putting this into wealth. And sure enough, I started finding new ways. I started reading new books, meeting new people, talking about masterminds. And from there, it just kind of took off. I took the disciplines that I had from the health field and working to put it into wealth. And we got to a successful point, the two of us. And then it started looking back and it was, okay, well, why do I want the things that I want? And I couldn't answer that question. I think once you get to a certain level of wealth, you start asking questions. You need to have a certain amount of money to start asking these philosophical questions, if you will, because otherwise you're just worrying about day to day, right? Scrapping by,
Absolutely.
trying to pay for your bills. You're not worried about how can I be happier. right? And it takes a certain level, and that's what I think a big part of this show is you and I discussing what we've learned and sharing that with people at all stages of life. Because no, you don't need to be wealthy necessarily to ask those questions. In my opinion, the sooner you ask those questions, the sooner your goal becomes clearer, right? If you have a goal and you have an end destination, you can very well map out your journey and get there in an efficient and safe way, not flying down the road, right?
And that's what I say that, when I was talking about myself, I feel like I'm the oddball a lot of times because we've been trained, I think, from very young age to not question things, to not ask questions. And, when I question the journey of getting a bachelor's degree or even, getting a professional degree, I didn't know where to look. Right. And that led me to kind of searching on my own, reading the typical, Robert Kiyosaki books. And when I read the second book of his, which is the Cash Flow Quadrant, that changed my life actually even more so than the Rich Dad Poor Dad. Because the Rich Dad Poor Dad book was more foundational, kind of
conceptual
thinking. Right. It's very conceptual. There's no actual things that you can implement. But when he kind of mapped out the process of coming, starting out as an employee, then moving into the self-employed, and then moving into the business owner, and then moving into the investor journey, which is exactly how I follow my process, right? Which is crazy. I started out after graduating from college, being an employee, then after that, I bought my own job, right? I bought myself a job where I own a laundromat with my husband. So after working 8-9 hours at work, we go home and work some more. But then that actually taught us okay, well, I don't want to own my own job. I want to own a business. So that took us to owning franchise business where we are wanting to hire employees and leverage their time. And then finally realizing I don't like to manage people. I don't even like to manage rental properties, to be honest, right? I just want to manage my money. And once that journey began for us as an investor, wow, the whole floodgate opened. And that mindset shift was just incredible. And, meeting people that have similar ways of thinking, it just really took off. And so that's why I love to talk my story because it's just so weird. It's not common. And I'm not, as a teacher, I taught elementary school for about 4 years. So as a teacher, you have fixed income, you don't have large sums to work with, but yet we made it happen because we wanted it to happen. So just that process is something I'm sure, and we've talked hours and hours about that too, of how to change that within yourself. That's a very interesting topic. I would love to hear more about other people, how they go from that, that process.
Well, I think even starting one step back, where I think people might be asking, oh, well, that's great. You guys had this entrepreneurial bug, but what if I don't? And people might be wondering, how do I know if I have that bug? And my first answer to that is, well, if you're listening to this podcast, more than likely you have that bug because you're searching for something, right? People who embark on a financial journey or a fitness journey, the people who are asking those questions, you need to first understand and be aware that you want to do something different. Then you start asking the questions and start searching. So if you're already here, well, you're already on the right journey. But what are some characteristics, in your opinion, that you think people might have that will let them know they have that entrepreneurial bug? Is it just the desire to make more money, or what do you think it is?
No, I think it's almost like, I hate to sound like conspiracy theories, right? But it's that clarity in your head that kind of thinks like there must be something. That has always been in my mind. It's like, there's got to be a better way. There's got to be something different. Why is everybody going that direction, right? Like, is it true if everybody's choosing to go into these professions, is that the best thing, right? Or is that a short-sighted? So it's that curiosity and that ability to question things. Not taking um, not taking what the textbook tells you as fact, right?
Right.
And just always be a little bit of a brat in a sense, like why? Why do I have to go to bed by 9 o'clock?
Yeah.
Justify it and let me see if that's what I wanted to do, right? Or is that really good for me? Let me do the research. So it's a little bit of that rebellious, I thinkness in people that you have to have. So maybe that kind of correlates with entrepreneurials, right? Like
Sure.
if you're entrepreneur, you are thinking outside of the box. You don't kind of accept the norm. So I think we all have that a little bit in us, right? Because if you look at little kids, they're curious, and you have to tell them no so many times before they will listen to you. I think we're the same, right? I asked to start my business. I was told no. I kept trying. I didn't give up, right? So that I think a little bit of that in everybody. You just have to find people who encourage you and foster that
Wow.
for you. Yeah.
That's such a good point. I remember I read a book and it's the name is escaping me, but the way you brought it right now, I think talking about children, right? As children, we're always asking questions. We are always we're wanting to know more. And you see a kid playing that you tell them to do something, they want to know why. Why can't I do this? Why can't I do that? What changes from to make a kid stop asking the why question? Well, it's parenting, right? You as a parents, you try to give the answers to a kid. You try to say, here's why. Why do I have to go to bed early? Here's why. And oftentimes the majority of people will say, because I said so, right? Now,
Yep.
most kids don't want to hear the science because, oh, you need 9 hours of sleep. You need 8 hours of sleep to wake up, feel refreshed. You'll feel better tomorrow. But there are certain individuals who, even as children, are data driven, who want to know, okay, well, why? And if you tell them, oh, if you sleep well, you're going to have a better day tomorrow. You're going to be able to play with your friends more, but you give them a reason and then they feel better about it. But what ends up happening is the curiosity is taken away sometimes by teachers and by parents. And we're taught consistently and we're disciplined from such a young age. This is the right way to go. Go to school, go to college, get your degree, get a job, buy a house, get into debt, so on and so forth. That's what we're taught. And when we hear it so many times, we believe it. We believe it.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes a moment of frustration. It takes a catastrophic event or maybe a miniature event that happens for you to then start asking the question, all right, this is like, there's got to be another way. The moment you start telling yourself there's got to be another way is when you start the exploration journey. And that's both, again, I go back to the key component, the growth, both financially, but also from a health perspective. I've met many people who cannot get up a flight of stairs, and they have been doing this the last decade of their life. But it isn't until there's one set of stairs that their grandchild or their child went up and they couldn't go up, and they feel like, man, this frustrates me. And they say, there's got to be a different way. I've tried different diets. I've tried different things. There's got to be a different way. And it takes that failing to ask the question to then propel yourself forward, which I think is so powerful. And multiple people will ask that question. And we talked about kind of the lifespan, right? Different phases. You might ask yourself that question in your 20s, but you're not ready to hear the information in your 20s. It might take until you're in your 30s to read the same book. I remember I read Rich Dad Poor Dad the first time and I thought, oh, this is great. But then it was analysis paralysis. Then I read the book again and I realized, oh, now I need to read Cash Flow Quadrant, like you mentioned. I was an employee at the time. Well, that's when things started propelling forward. So that's such a unique connection that I think you made about with children and kind of and how we're taught. And of course, who better to know than a school teacher, right?
It's as parents. I have a daughter, so she's a teenager now. So as I always tell her, like, you were not born with a instruction manual. I'm doing the best that I can. I really don't know what I'm doing, to be honest, right? But I'm always just trying to figure out, like, okay, well, when I was your age, and what I wish I had known, and it's hard to balance, right? I don't want to be, reliving my life through her, which is a huge temptation, right? We're like, oh my God, go to this school. I love this school, but it's her choice. So we have to like learn to scale back a lot.
Right.
But ultimately, I want to, we're talking about this whole thing, like we're here on earth for everybody has a purpose, right? And we kind of spend the majority of our time in our youth, first of all, not even realize that we need to find a purpose. You're just kind of doing your thing, routine, pay bills, and doing what others are telling you to do. And when you really think about it, like say we can live till 100 years old. The first quarter of our life is doing what other people are telling us to do,
Sure.
following directions, right? And then we get to our mid-20s and 30s and whatnot. That's kind of our really like golden years where we are in control of ourselves. And this is when we can acquire the knowledge that we now choose to acquire. We can choose who we hang out with and spend time with. And this is the part where, your spouse is so important, right? And we know, Mike, and I know Yesenia, and I always look at our spouses and kind of feel bad for them in some way.
They need a support group.
But I love that they are so supportive, and the reason why we are here today is because of them, right? We got to give them full credit for kind of being in sync with us on this, vibrating on the same level, if you want to say that, right? So I'm just looking forward to like the next, for me anyways, my next 2 quarters left. I have 2 more quarters left. What is that going to be like, right? I'm over the following the rules and doing what they're telling me to do. I've gotten through like, hey, I've found my purpose. I've like gone through those processes, and now I've found a system that works for me. I think I'm in the how do I leave that legacy behind stage. So that's where I am. I'm curious to what you want to say about that.
Yeah, I think that's a powerful thought to have, knowing about kind of leaving your legacy. And you mentioned kind of splitting your life into quarters, if you will. And I think that everyone's quarters can be different, right? Some people learn young, some people learn later. My takeaway from this episode and just from listening to you is that it can be done no matter what your background is, whether you're born here, not born here, whether you born with money, not born with money, whether you are destined to be a doctor and then midway through residency you realize, what the heck am I doing here, and then go back. Of course, it's easier to do it at certain, like there's always going to be an easier time, but there's never going to be a better time than now, because that's nothing you can't do until at that moment. So for me, it is powerful. I think that there is always that question that needs to be asked. And I think that's something that maybe people don't ask themselves, which I think should be asked, is why? Okay, I want more, but why do I want more? Okay, there's got to be another way. Why? And typically people will answer that question in the answer of, I want to be happy. And there's nothing wrong with that, but we have to first define happiness. We have to first define success. And I know that we're going to spend episodes talking about what success looks like, what happiness looks like. And of course, at the end of the day, it is all relative, but there are key questions and key components that we can ask and that others can ask of themselves to learn about that. And you mentioned relationships, and I think that will be a conversation on its own, both intimate relationships, but also friendships, because the people you were the one that told me this quote before. And ever since then, I've never been able to not hear it anymore, about you are the product of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And there's been studies that have shown that if you take the income of the 5 people that you spend the most time with, your income will be an average of their 5 incomes. And that to me is powerful. Like that is huge to me, that like you're surrounded by that. And now we're talking about wanting to grow individually, but also with our friends and bring people up to our tiny little mountain. We're not Bezos. Like they're on a whole different stratosphere, but success is relative. And we've hit what we would define as success in our lives and are able to enjoy the fruits of our labor. And now we want to share that message with others. And the whole point of this episode is to get people to learn a little bit about us. And, you and I it's funny when when we're together in person and when we take pictures together, you look at and you're like, these people are teaching us about financial literacy. Like, we're all over the place. Like we're not, when people think of the textbook definition of wealth, they might not think of us. We might not look like the standard definition, but that to me is great. I think that's so powerful. And as we continue to share our backgrounds and our message, we're hoping that people can relate to that. So any final thoughts, any of your key takeaways?
Well, this maybe we will discuss further in the next episode, but I like to, I talk about the quarters of our life, but we can even shrink it down even more and just say every 5 years, right? So if and this is a great question that I heard, which gave me a lot of food for thought, was if the next 5 years was just a chapter in your book of life, what is that chapter is going to be about?
I'll take it a step further. What would be the title of that chapter? Because maybe we don't get into necessarily the whole chapter right now, but if you had to sum it up, and we can ask that question right now, it's a very quick answer. What's the title of that chapter for you?
For the next 5 years, my chapter title will be transformation. And we can talk about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that. I know you mentioned your goal for wanting to be financial transformer, right? I love that. I absolutely love that term. For me, it's a tough answer because I wasn't even thinking about this. I asked you off the top of my head and I didn't even have an answer. I think if I had to put it in one word, it would be the process or the journey. And that there's obviously that can be unraveled, which I think the transformation and the journey are two different words, but they're on the same wavelength, especially because I know how you and I think. Right. And I think that to summarize those two words, we've spent a lot of time getting to a destination because we've broken free of the shackles initially of what we were told we should be doing. And we're like, no, we're going to go on our own journey and go make millions because that was the other alternative. But we didn't really think about the journey or the transformation as we got there. But now we have the opportunity as we go into the next 5 years to fully transform and to fully appreciate the process and appreciate the journey. And that this podcast is part of that process. It's part of that journey. And I hope that people will see kind of what we're trying to bring in. And I'm so excited to be here.
Yes, same here. Here.
All right. Well, thanks again for coming today, Pei. Thanks everybody for joining in. Be on the lookout for the next episode. Who knows what we're going to discuss, but I guarantee you it will be fun. All right, everybody. Take care.
Bye.